Hey guys, I'm back. I've been away for a while. I've been working on a music video for among other things, I've been working on a music video for Uku&Lily. That is out right now. It's just come out online, so I'll leave the link in the description and up there for you to see it. That would be great if you watch it and leave a nice review. I'd really appreciate that. One of the things that I was thinking of when I was making this was how important the role of light is in really any film, including animation. I've been researching it a lot, so I thought it was high time I make a video about light, learning light for use in animation. So that's what this is going to be about. I've prepared a little presentation for you, and I'm going to go into some demos. The important one of these bullet points is that we create visuals under the assumption that there is light present. Without light, we can't see anything. Even if you haven't considered it, even if you haven't thought of it, and you've added a color to something that's not black, it's assuming that there's light there. That being said, the role of light in your animation can vary. You can have light as just an aesthetic kind of consideration where you're just adding it to make things look nice, make things look pretty, or you can go even further and actually use light in your story. Maybe the light acts in the plot in some way. If you want to do magic, it's very good to learn about light first, because magic spells, a lot of them emit some kind of light, so it's useful for things like that. Or you can just ignore light completely and just kind of break the fourth wall and show that it's in construction and not consider light in the same way that a naturalist would. So a material can reflect light, emit light, it can pass light through it, and it can refract light, so it can actually change the course of the light path. I can't go into them in too much depth here because it's a massive subject. You don't have to fully understand it to use it. You can actually work backwards from references that you see. So study references and just have a look at what they're doing. That's going to be the main message in this, I think. In 3D animation, they actually simulate light bouncing around. It's kind of like a simulation of photons. But in 2D animation, we don't have that. Based on your observation, how can you cheat to make it look like there's light there? Okay, I'm gonna quickly explain some of the processes that I went through to create this hand animation for Sam Kohler, because I think a few of you might ask me about this if I don't. Yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of different layers, and it was very complex. Basically, the challenge with this one was not how to add light in because they were static rays, but how to take light out. Having the hand create a cast shadow which would affect the rays beneath it. I did some soft shading, so you can see I started off, I just animated the hand how I would, not thinking about the light too much yet. I created a shadow pass by using mask layers, and I also created a highlight pass by creating mask layers and just using a soft brush to brighten it to give it this nice soft glow on the top of the arm. Then after that, I used straight lines with one of my custom brushes to create these rays, and I wanted the rays to have that kind of stringy quality. The lines were very parallel. Once I'd created those rays, it was more a question of how to block them out from beneath the arm, so they would hit the arm and then they wouldn't travel any further than the arm because the arm is an opaque surface. So the way I did it was I created an eraser that was a custom shape, and that shape was this weird triangle shape, and the important part of that shape is that edge that would meet the light would run parallel to the light rays. Yeah, you can see here it's kind of a weird process, and at first I thought it might be good to have it as like a fade because of the finger area being a bit hazy, but then I realized it actually would look better if it was quite a hard difference between there being light and no light with those rays. I needed that hard line. So yeah, you can see here me erasing those parts and basically broke those rays down frame by frame and then went in with the eraser. And then I created a duplicate layer of the full rays and then put that behind and lowered the opacity. So it's the first time I've done that, and strangely, it actually worked. I'm going to go through some really quick lighting setups. 3-point lighting. So this comes from film. This is the standard for lighting a subject so that it's well defined and there's clarity there. So this typically you have if this is a top down, you have a key light, which is kind of doing the main work, a fill light, which is filling in from the side, and a hair light or a backlight. Creates a little rim edge around the figure, which separates them out from whatever's behind them. And thinking about animation here, hand-drawn animation, you can actually really easily do an effect like this just by taking the line art. If you're doing line art and you've drawn an outline, which chances are you have, you can actually just make that line art on one of the sides. You can favor it on this side. You can just make that brighter. And that would do the job. Okay, downlight. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. This scene really pushes it to the max. In introduction scene in The Godfather, heavy downlighting on the faces, skull-like shape, which I think was amazing and really innovative. Okay, uplighting is pretty fun. I've used it once or twice, and it's instantly got a very dramatic effect to it, very unnatural. I think this is from Disney's Fantasia, 1949, and yeah, so it's a lot of it is for evil, scary creatures, so it's really good for that. But yeah, uplight is kind of rarely used, but I really like to use it at select points. Backlight is great. It's really good for defining a silhouette. If something's just backlit, these are some of my favorite examples. So Kill Bill, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I really love this clip. And this one I can't remember what it's from, to be honest, but I love it. Rim light, so this is what we just described. Subject pops from the background. Again, this is another one from Janusz Kaminski. I think he made this one for The Little Princess, and this is from Blade Runner. Front light is probably the rarest you'll ever see, because it's not really that good at anything, and I almost didn't put it in here, honestly, but then I remembered this photographer that I found ages ago called George Shiras. So this is a picture of him, and so he would drift down this still river at night time, and this was way back in the day, because look at that rig he's got set up there, and he would just flash photograph the wildlife. I don't know how exactly, but it was amazing. He'd creep up on this wildlife, probably give them the fright of their lives, but get these amazing photographs with a very interesting look. This one in particular is really, it's stuck in my mind. Really interesting. Yeah, it makes the subject flat, makes them very flat, which is an effect that you can use if you think creatively about it. Diffuse lighting. So this is very common because cloudy days, the sun just illuminates all the clouds. The light bounces around off the clouds and just sort of creates an even spread of light, which doesn't appear to be coming from any particular direction. It's just kind of coming from everywhere, and so everything is illuminated. Now, this is pretty useful actually, because when I don't have time to shade my character, which is a lot, you'll see that a lot of my films I managed to get away with not shading my character. Diffuse lighting, you don't really need to shade. There's not a lot of harsh shadows anywhere. It's just sort of block colors. But that being said, it's not very interesting. Diffuse lighting is probably the least interesting of them all. It's very plain, but you can use it. Talking about a few other things, light temperature. Generally, when we're talking about light spectrum, we don't tend to use the entire hue spectrum going through from, green, yellow, blue, purple, magenta. We don't go through all of them. We just limit it to a sort of duality of warm and cold. Even with that, deciding on the light temperature, you have different effects. So warm light could suggest comfort, happiness. Too warm, you could depict hell or discomfort. Again, that's a creative decision. All these are creative things that you can try. Cold light, sterile, hostile, fear, danger, calm, dead. These are all connotations of cold light. So now we're getting onto the fun stuff finally. Fun little decorations, really. So lens flares are the first thing on the fun stuff. It's a phenomenon when light shoots directly into the camera lens. They create a really nice pattern across the frame. Some cinematographers don't like any lens flares. They think that it's unnatural, that it's breaking the fourth wall. It doesn't feel natural because your eyes don't typically do lens flares. But other filmmakers love lens flares and they include them a lot. So I've noticed here that they're a bit overused by certain directors. Michael Bay and J.J. Abrams are big culprits of just doing too many lens flares. They're just everywhere. And this picture is a shot from Your Name, which is an animated film by MAKOTO Shinkai. Of course I'm going to talk about MAKOTO Shinkai in a video about light. He's so good. So yeah, there are a few different ways of creating lens flares. The two that I use are either generating one in After Effects, in Adobe After Effects, or actually using a PNG image and just overlaying it onto a shot, or using a blending mode to integrate it with the shot. Light leaks are slightly different. I've used light leaks in the past. This is actual footage that's captured in a kind of weird way. You kind of shine light into the lens and move it around. Again, there are certain culprits who are overusing it. So it's overused in like wedding videos, travel videos use light leaks so much. They just overlay it and slap it on everything. But it can work, and I'll show you this scene in Falling Stars where I actually experimented with a light leak. I used a light leak and then masked it and then animated the mask around, and the mask was containing within it this light leak. Okay, painting in light. So this is one of my go-to methods. I find that you can get something which is both natural and realistic, but also stylized. So yeah, I use blending modes for this, and I'm going to show you now how to use some blending modes. But again, you don't need to fully understand them. I will explain them quickly. Like basically a blending mode, it's based on the light and dark spectrum of any pixels, and it depends on how the computer interprets that, and then it tries to blend it with the layers below. So any layer on top, if it's got a blending mode on it, it will blend it with the layers below in a certain way, and it depends on how it interprets the light and dark of each pixel. It's weird. So this is a background that I painted for the Uku&Lily music video. I get a brush. It can be any brush really. This is one of my standard brushes that I use. This is what the brush might look like, just plain ordinary settings. Okay, so I'll paint just a squiggle for now, just to show you how it works. What I tend to do, because you don't really know which one it's going to be perfect for, I tend to scroll through them and just land on the one that feels natural. But I will give you a clue. I think these are a collection of lightened ones. So it's usually one of these ones. So I'll start here. So that one doesn't seem to do anything. Screen, color dodge. I love color dodge. It's so good. Linear dodge, which is the same as add. And lighter color and overlay. I really like overlay as well. It's very useful, very interesting results. Now, what you can do is you can set it to one that you think is kind of interesting, and let's just put it here to show you. Actually, I'll make it simpler. Okay, so we've got a square, and I'll put it to overlay, and it's this sort of pink color. Here's where the experimenting comes in. So I'm going to take the layer, I'm going to go to image, adjustments, hue saturation. So now I'm just going to change the hue and see what happens. So the cool thing about this blending mode, these blending modes, is that they will sort of always lighten what's underneath it if you're within that collection of blending modes. They're always going to make it brighter. But then how they make it brighter depends on a lot of different things. So we can see if we want it to be bright and have like a cold brightness, or if we want it to have like a warm brightness or something in between. You know, I think these purples can bring out some really nice colors. It's all about experimenting, you know, whatever you want. And this is exactly how I created things like this effect up in the corner here, and that layer is set to color dodge, which is one of my go-tos for just bringing in these nice bursts of color, because color dodge makes them really saturated. So I did some of the brush strokes. If we turn that color dodge to normal, that's what it actually looks like. You see, it's much less vibrant. Put it to color dodge and it just makes it pop out. It adds that saturation, but it also adds these interesting colors that you would never expect. And that's what I like about it. It introduces an element to your painting or to your image that you didn't expect. So let me show you how I paint with light. This is the layer I've been hiding. This is basically the sort of ending shot of the animated piece. So I did this by painting in the light and setting it to different blending modes. And the way I animated it later was I used masks in After Effects and I animated those mask paths. Yeah, you can take a brush like this. I want something with some kind of grain in it, some kind of grit, where maybe towards the edges it sort of starts to break down. So then I'll just do a straight line. I want it to be straight because light moves in straight lines. And just create the lines first. I'm going to shift them afterwards. So now I can take that, and now I can actually splay them out by using the free transform tool. I'm actually holding down Control to do it. So then I can get that sort of perspective shift. It's actually so that the light seems to be splaying out like that. And now I'm going to choose the blending mode. So I click on it first, and then I use the arrow keys to just scroll through them. These first ones aren't going to do it because they're for darken. But then get to lighten, and that creates an interesting effect. Now to screen. Okay. So I quite like that, but I'm not too keen on the color yet. So I take the hue, shift it about again, and see if there's anything I can get it to. I can also reduce the saturation or increase it. If I think that's not strong enough, I can just go Control J and double it. So I just doubled the layers up. I duplicated the layers and that doubles the strength. Or I can reduce the opacity and just have it very faint. So there's so many degrees of control that you have in Photoshop to help you with this. And then you can like further sculpt the light ray, consider like where it would taper off so it wouldn't show some of those bits. So that's an example. It's way more messy because I haven't had time, but that's basically how I did these. And I had them all on their own layers so that I could move them independently and create a more complex movement later in After Effects. One more trick I'll show you in Photoshop, and you don't have to use Photoshop, you can use other softwares, but I recommend Photoshop just because it's so versatile and it's so handy. Down here there are these effects layers, so you go onto them. I like exposure, so if I go to exposure, I can increase the exposure for the whole thing, and this is what happens. Look at that. So you can see that the bright areas are getting blown out. They're just too bright, they're white. And everything else is sort of raising the levels. If you look at the histogram, it just shows everything shifting up on the histogram. So now I'm gonna use this, which is a layer mask. I'm gonna make it all black, so it just, nothing is happening with that yet because it's all black. So I've done the layer mask and it's black, none of it is showing. Now I can paint white on the layer mask and paint that light into the shot. So look at that. I can paint around and it's like painting with light. It's amazing. If I take one of my favorite brushes, I can just go around to the areas that I want to make brighter add a little bit of paint it in. Look at that, I'm painting with light. It's incredible. And that's pretty much what I use. You could use the lasso tool for a more crispy look, so I could make it very crisp if I wanted to. Like, I could take that part and, you know, make it harder divisions. It gives you so much control over the light of your scene. If I wanted this scene to be different, I wanted like a UFO scene or something, look, I could just paint light to come down from the sky like that. It's up to you. It's up to you, whatever you use it for. Okay, so now I've taken that painting and brought it into After Effects, where I'm actually going to animate the light. Well, I actually already have, so I'm just showing you what I've already done in After Effects with animating this piece. Basically, what I did for reference of this clip is I took ordinary photos of light breaking through clouds, like sunlight breaking through clouds, and I flipped them upside down to see what that would look like. And that's how I got this reference for this shot, for what it would look like. This is where the light is, and when I go into this group, you can see it's all in different layers. And I used masks. They all got their blending modes on. Most of these are overlay, apart from the core of it here, which is a more pure light, and that is set to add overlay, so add blending mode. Okay, so this is what that animation looks like. So I wanted all these little streaks to kind of have their own animation coming in and revealing, and they kind of fan outwards. So if I take one of these, let's have a look at this one. If I isolate this one so we can only see this one, so this is what the mask looks like. So you see that mask, the mask reveals what is inside it. So I animated that mask using a few different points here, and it's just tweened between them with some easing. So if I go into the can't remember what you call it, graph editor, then you can see the easing I've done on this mask for the speed at which it reveals. So it slows out. It starts to get slower as it goes on. So when I take away those lines, it looks like this. So what I did is I took the cloud layers and I broke them apart so that they were on, we had different groupings here. I had to use the lasso tool and repaint some of it. So we had like 4 main groups here. And that way I was able to tween them. But not only did I tween them, I created 2 different versions of these cloud groups. I created one version where the clouds had no highlight rims on them. So you can see they're kind of flat colors. Then within each of them, so I had one flat version and one highlighted version. This is the highlighted version. This is the flat version, and it gradually reveals the highlighted version underneath. You see before your eyes these clouds getting highlights as they move out. Yeah, it took some problem solving to think of how to do that, and they're moving out so it feels like they're separating more, which is good for the storyline that we were going for. Yeah, that took some problem solving, but that's how I went about doing it. That's how I animated light. The shot before that, I had this shot, which I had to do this shot really fast to meet the deadline, and he's kind of falling into these rays of light. The rays of light, they're the same light rays. I drag and dropped them in here and sort of moved them about so you wouldn't be able to tell. And I added this thing over the top. Now, luckily for me, there's this guy online who's been giving away his light leaks for free, and these are really high quality light leaks. So that's what this is. I'll show you up on the screen what this light leak looks like first before I dropped it into my scene. And then I positioned this. I found the right point on the timeline of this light leak footage, and I moved it into position. I simply set it on its layer above. I set it to add and reduce the opacity a little bit to just integrate it with the rest of the scene. So now I'm going to flick on and off what it looks like with and without this light leak. So you can see the difference is massive. Without the light leak and then with the light leak, it adds so much to the scene, and it also adds complexity, because this light leak is moving, and there are all these crazy shapes which are so intricate, and I loved that. I thought it looked so cool. It looked like the surface of the sun or something. That's a case where using a light leak, I kind of used it creatively, I guess, and it really paid off. It wasn't just slapping it across my entire footage, like all the footage. I used it selectively, and it was really simple to do. It's just a thing that I added on at the end that made all the difference. Emitting light. So emitting light is really easy because all you have to do is add a glow. In most animation softwares you can add a glow. Generally, from what I've observed, there is a fall off to the glow, and for that fall off I recommend that you make that more saturated than the body of the glow. So that's the only advice I have really for that. Keep that in mind, and that can help you. Transformation scenes, when I'm doing magic and stuff like that, slap a glow on there, it's going to look great. Now we've kind of reached the end of that section, and I just want to go through some of the places where I'm inspired. Here's where I recommend you research, because this is where I've found some really fascinating stuff. So photography and film, it's in the name, measurement of light. I'm not sure if that's the actual term, but that's how I think of it. That's how I see it. It's the measurement of light. Here are three of my favorite cinematographers. Number one, Emanuel Lubezki. He is... If you're going to see one film from him, I recommend The Tree of Life, because he did that all with using natural light, and it's just beautiful. I think all three of these are Oscar-winning cinematographers. Painting as well. The thing with painters is they have been studying light and the emotional effects of light and the atmosphere of light long before animation was ever really a thing. There are so many different painters I could talk about here, but three that I want to mention: John Singer Sargent, and by the way, I've got the book here. His watercolors, he's like the GOAT painter. So I'll leave that in the description. It's a beautiful book. It's so inspiring to see. Monet, very observant of light. He did one which is like the same painting but at different times of day, and was observing how the light changes and how the atmosphere is different at different times of day. And a more recent one, one that's still active today, is Xiaoming Wu, and I'm really impressed with his paintings, and light is very prevalent in his paintings, and they're just fantastic. They're like amazing. Check out Xiaoming Wu. Definitely check out John Singer Sargent and Monet, Claude Monet. Installation. So Olafur Eliasson is a installation creator, and I went to his exhibit in the Tate. These are real life things that he builds, and it's so interesting because he's exploring light, present the elements, especially light, in ways that you never really see it in day-to-day life. This one is like these very fine water particles that fall from the ceiling. It's in this dark room that I went into, and then he shines light through these tiny little particles of water to create this rainbow effect. And the other one I want to talk about is this one. This is like the entrance hall that you walk into the Tate, and he just put this massive artificial sun at the wall, and just look at that picture. That's really what it was like. It's no longer there, but it's a great picture. It's very interesting. MAKOTO Shinkai, I mentioned him earlier. You can tell from this guy, he loves light. He explores light in so many different ways. Like every shot in his film, the light is just overflowing. It's spilling into every area of the frame in beautiful ways, and he's really captured natural light. His team of background artists, oh, and guess what? They use Photoshop, they use After Effects. Yeah, so we have the same tools available to us as this team. I personally recommend Your Name. I think Your Name was a complete home run of a film. His other ones are really good as well, and I haven't seen his recent one yet. I'm going to. I highly recommend getting a DSLR camera. This changed the game for me. It really did. When I bought a DSLR camera and started using it, I was learning real practical lessons about multiple things. One of them being light, the other being composition, camera movement, 3D space, all these things I started to learn practically. I'm gonna create a link in the description where I will recommend a certain DSLR camera. I recommend one where you can change the lenses, because then you can actually buy better lenses as you get more money and you get more into it. You can upgrade and you can learn how lenses work, which is also really fascinating. The shot that you create depends on what lens you're using. Last message is observation, experimentation, and practice. 3 things that are gonna up your game with adding light to your animations and using light in your animations. I've got plenty of other projects coming out in the very near future which are really exciting, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can also check me out on Patreon. You can go to animatorguild.com. There's tons of these links in the description that I made to help you. Alright, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.